Hello and welcome to the Cardiac Cats YouTube channel. I'm your host, Jacob Shorba, and today we have the combine wrapping up. We just saw some of the last exercises take place on the field, and so we're going to talk about it. We're going to go through each position, some lighter than others, such as quarterback, where we'll start, and just talk about kind of what we learned, maybe some of the measurements that came in, how they impact things. I think there were a lot of things that stood out at the combine this year, despite so many players deciding not to participate, which I don't, I kind of understand it. At the same time, I don't for some. I think it's very disappointing to have this huge event where seemingly half the people that are there have no interest in actually doing anything on the field, because it makes your job harder as an evaluator for just people who do it for fun like myself, but more importantly, for the teams that want to learn this stuff and they don't get to see it because it is important, right? I think there is some level you care about the things in the combine. And I'm personally someone who would probably advocate for it a little bit more than others. So just my general thoughts. But with that said, we'll go ahead and jump into this. Quarterback, not a lot to stand out. Not a lot of people participated in any drills. Ward and Sanders decided to elect for their pro days, I believe. So didn't see much out of them. But as far as how they interviewed, I thought it was very impressive, especially for Sanders. It feels as if these guys are valued higher by the league, maybe than what we've been conditioned to think. As fans are conditioned ourselves to think since the start of this process, where you didn't have a first-round quarterback, and it's hard to maybe get on board with these guys going at the top of the draft. But I do think that both of them are deserving of a top pick. The Combine didn't do a ton for that, other than they got to meet with teams. Sound like they did a very good job. And that's kind of all we can get out of that. Interesting, too, kind of similar size for these guys. Ward is a little bit thicker, but Sanders got a little more length, which isn't really a huge deal as a quarterback, and by length I mean more so like the arms and his wingspan. Now, Jalen Milroe, kind of shocked he didn't test out, or he did some stuff, I think. Thought he would maybe show out a little bit more than he did. Not much else to note here. We had Tyler Shao ran this. I don't know why this isn't like dark red. I'll probably have to fix some of my coding on here, but he was someone who was impressive. Not shocked. I watched him recently, and I think he's a far better quarterback prospect than I would have ever imagined for someone I'd be watching this deep in a class this late in the process. But Shao is definitely someone who's getting a lot of hype. Outside of that, though, not much stood out to me as far as all these players. You had some guys who came in with really good size. Riley Leonard being one. Gabriel was 5'11", which works well in his favor. Outside of that, though, yeah, not going to talk too much about quarterback. Just going to go through that pretty quick, especially since we're Jaguars fans. We aren't worrying about that position for quite a while. Now, running back, once again, some people didn't participate. Ashton Genty being one of them. Very disappointed by that. But came in kind of with the size you'd expect from seeing him on the field. Nothing shocking there. 211 pounds. Quinshawn Judkins thought looked pretty good. He ran pretty. I would say the impressive part, probably the 10-yard split, right? He was pretty explosive out there. Also 220 pounds. It's a great combination for him. Travion Henderson, kind of shocked he didn't run quicker. I thought he might be like a 4.3 kind of guy, but he actually ends up having a worse 10-yard split than Judkins. But you can see he does have better overall speed. And when you watch the film, you got to put some value into that. And we saw him be an incredibly explosive runner through the film last year. He also did come in a little small. I will say that. 202 pounds is not fantastic, or what you're exactly looking for. Now, something I should probably go ahead and mention. Rankings currently have not been updated for me. I have not gone back through and done that. This is getting recorded right at the end of the combine. I haven't been able to sort anything because I've had everything filtered by position, so I can just quickly go through and put in new measurements and put in 40-yard dash times and all that sort of stuff. But Kyle Monangai didn't run really fast. He ran a 4.6, which was not good compared to the rest of the class, but kind of what you'd expect. Did have a good 10-yard split time, which is not shocking. He did well in the drills as well with his short area quickness. It's the kind of player he is. And, watching film the other day, I realized that he's so similar in the way he runs to what you see out of, say, Kyron Williams from the Rams. And you look at the way Williams tested out, ran like a 4.65. So Monangai might honestly be almost a little more athletic than what Kyron is. Debatable, right? But at least from the testing, and I think Monangai, he's got his own style of athleticism. It's not the long speed, it's none of that, but he's very good in the short area. He's very good at accelerating. Those are things that are really impressive about his game. I thought he looked good at the Combine. I was impressed. I'm also probably a little biased. He's been a favorite of mine, but I was happy with how he performed. Scadaboo did not end up doing any drills, so not much you can take out of that, but big guy, 219 pounds, 5'9". That's a lot of mass on a small frame. Devin Neal did not run that well. 4.58, not exactly what you want to see out of him. Omarion Hampton, I thought, tested fine. Maybe could have ran a little bit faster. Just note some guys down here. Not going to go through everyone on this list. Obviously, Ollie Gordon comes in huge. 6'1", 226 pounds, 80-inch wingspan, which is insanity. Rashard Smith, maybe not as fast as I would have thought. ETN ran well. Bashal Tuden was the guy who probably stood out the most as far as the speed here. I mean, 4.32 was one of the best times in the Combine, and that's going to be something that might get him into day 2 consideration. I could definitely see that, but he had a really good performance. The big question about him as a player is ball security. He's had a lot of fumbles in recent years. If you get rid of that, this is a top prospect at the position. I think that's very fair to say, but you haven't got rid of it at this point. He's got to prove that. Taj Brooks, look, this isn't an incredible time, but he ran a lot faster than some people thought. I think that's going to help his stock, which might have been falling a little bit. But yeah, Caleb Johnson, I'm shocked by the 40 time. 4.57. This was someone who was supposed to be a very explosive runner and didn't really show. And in the 10-yard split, this is interesting to me because I did not see, when I watched this film, a whole lot of explosion or the short area quickness. It was a lot of just running in a straight line and getting to top speed. It didn't really impress me a lot. And you see him come in with one of the worst 10-yard splits. I mean, I'm not too surprised by that. I'm just more surprised that the 40-yard dash overall was as slow as it was. It was nowhere near what I thought he would run, which was somewhere in the 4.4s. DJ Giddens had a good performance, I would say. But outside of that, probably all I'm going to note here. We'll go to the wide receiver position. Travis Hunter, and you could consider him wide receiver or cornerback, did not test out, but, got measurements on him. Maybe not as tall as you would have expected, but still, he's got a pretty good height that he's working with, over 6 foot. 188 pounds was maybe more than people thought. There was some concern about his weight, but I think he's got the size to be able to at least take a shot at playing on both sides. And I do trust him in that. And I'm someone who, my personal thoughts are, I'd let him prove it at the NFL level, and if it doesn't work, okay, too bad. Let's get the guy on maybe a snap count for how much he's playing on both sides of the ball. So just my personal thoughts there on Travis Hunter. But I think he ultimately came in with decent size, and you'll see this, like, maybe doesn't stand out as like dark green or bright green, but you've also got guys like Tetero and McMillan here, and even bigger players like Jaden Higgins. I think he came in crazy size, over 33-inch arms. So he was someone who really stood out as well with the sub 4.5 40-yard dash. He's got some really good tools to work with. Someone who didn't, Isaiah Bond, would have expected maybe a tenth faster, especially for someone talking about how he was maybe going to run a 4.1, and then he just completely missed that. So, kind of disappointing from him. Matthew Golden, obviously got to say something about him. He's the guy who stole the show here. Running a 4.29 was an incredible time. He's someone I'm going to have to go back and rewatch. And, I really have only done one evaluation of him so far. That's got to change, but he might be someone who, after his performance, has put himself firmly in the first round. There's a real shot of that for him. You had some other good performances from Luther Burden, Jalen Royals. Interesting as well for both these guys who are supposed to be 5'11", both coming in at 6 foot, actually, at the end of the day, which was not what we were thinking. Thought he would be a little bit smaller, but both of them end up actually gaining size, and there's been some talk about the discrepancy between combine measurements and Senior Bowl measurements being so far off, or we'll call it bowl game measurements. Now, other guys who stood out, Ty Felton ran way faster than I ever thought he would. Definitely impressive what he did. Torrey Horton as well, very good athlete. Kyle Williams was another guy. Sorry. Along with Jalen Noel, who had a really good performance. And then final guy I'll note here, Pat Bryant, 4.61. I have not watched him yet. You can see that here. I don't have any notes on him yet. But not too surprised. Kind of figured he wouldn't be someone who'd have an incredible performance today. Now, tight end. Not a lot of guys ran here. You saw good size for Tyler Warren. Nothing shocking there. Colston Loveland as well, though, especially the arm length and the size of his hands. Really good stuff. Going to help him catch the ball. Harold Fannin kind of ran average as far as an athlete. This will make it seem like it's a lot faster just by the color coding of this, but not super impressive maybe for what he expected. Gunnar Helm, I know, ended up rolling his ankle during practices, and unfortunately that hurt his time here. And the 10-yard split, you can especially see that it's 0.13 seconds off of what Fannin did, and Fannin is not the most explosive player out there. So I think this is one you kind of got to discount. Don't really think about too much because he was going out there and competing while he was hurt. So just something to consider there. Mitchell Evans, for his size at 258, kind of blocker he is, 6'5", I think he ran pretty well. I think he's going to be fine as an athlete. 10-yard split. It's good stuff. So he was definitely someone who stood out. Jackson Hawes kind of saw what I expected. Struggled a little bit during receiving drills. And then the last guy I'll note here, actually two more. Bryson Nesbitt, the 40-yard dash, not impressive. I thought he was a lot faster on film. He is not. Definitely was a little bit off on that. And then Terrence Ferguson ended up having the fastest time out of this group. I saw the guy who runs the Sleeper account on Twitter put a bet on him for $10 and got 4,000 for the 40-yard dash time, that he would be the fastest of the tight ends. Don't know how the hell that happened, but that's pretty crazy stuff. That's really what stood out to me about Ferguson, was seeing that. Now, tackles. We'll talk about injuries here for a second. Just saw something today regarding Josh Simmons. Also watched his interview yesterday. He is ahead of schedule in his recovery. He is doing very well in that regard, and he is expected to probably go a little bit higher than maybe we would have thought he would have. Just considering, as I fix the coding here, considering the injury he had and how extreme it could have been, how that could impact your career as a player. So, kind of, I would say, surprising me. I didn't think he would be that far ahead on it, but good for him. Very happy for him that he's in the spot he is, and I think he could be someone who goes top 20 in this class just based off how well he played this year and what the upside is. As far as measurements for him, comes in fine. The span, the wingspan's pretty damn good. Everything looks red because of a guy named Colin Pierce. I have down here. Yeah, 36-inch arms, 88-inch wingspan. Just absolutely ridiculous numbers. So he was definitely someone who caught people's eyes at the combine. You can also mention Cameron Williams. The size of his hands are freaking ridiculous. Over a 7-foot wingspan as well. He's got a lot of tools, but super developmental prospect, right? It's very clearly what he is. Durante Ursary ran very well for especially 331. Was impressed by that. Will Campbell getting a sub 5 second time. Felt like he was someone who had a good week at the Senior Bowl, not the Senior Bowl, the Combine. Although this arm length is a little questionable, but you also saw him come in apparently above that before. So, which is it, right? He might actually have 33-inch arms, but the measurements are just so far off that we don't know. So he's going to hover around. As far as the interior offensive line, Tyler Booker started off really strong today, right? 6'4.5", 321 pounds, so he slimmed down a bit, but 11-inch hands, 34.5-inch arms, and nearly a 7-foot wingspan. Crazy size for a guard. And he's 21 years old. This is the concern, though. The 5.38 40-yard dash, nearly a 2-second 10-yard split. That's not good, right? That's a concern. And so that's going to hurt, especially for the kind of scheme that Jacksonville runs, the kind of players they brought in, which has generally been more athletic guys. There's a question there. Because how well does Tyler Booker fit in that scheme? I still think he's going to be a great player at the NFL level. I think that's going to work out ultimately. I think he's better than this, but this is really far off from what you would have liked to see. You also got some really good size for Jonah Savanea. Gray Zabel kind of came in exactly where he was before, didn't test out. Armand Membu, the size he has, he could play tackle, honestly. He's someone who's definitely capable of it. Probably will get a shot there in the NFL, or is deserving of getting a shot. We'll have to see what happens. But, yeah, not a lot of testing out here. You've got a few guys, Connor Colby and Miles Frazier, who kind of ran exactly where I'd expect. Now, Marcus Mbow, I think this is like a whole inch down from where it was before as far as the arm length for him. So, kind of wondering whether that's really true or not. But not where you want it to be. But he is playing on the inside, so that's worth considering. But not a ton, I would say, stood out today, aside from that, with the offensive line. So let's jump onto the defensive side of the ball. Let's talk about some of these guys who stood out. So Mason Graham, this is a little concerning to me. It's not great size for defensive tackle. He came in under 300 pounds as well. So I'm not too thrilled about that. I have a hard time getting on the train of him being the guy at number 5. If I'm being honest, I have a lot of questions about that. But he is a really good player outside of this. And size is not everything for these positions in the NFL. You just got to have enough to be able to go out there. And Graham has played very well with Michigan. He's been a phenomenal player for them. So I think he's going to be good in the NFL. It's just a question of like how high do you take the kind of player he's going to be? And that's where I get a little concerned. Now, Kenneth Grant, great size here. Not surprised. Didn't test out. Same with Walter Nolan as far as not testing out here. Derek Harmon, he had a great day. Great size, man. He got just everything going in his favor here. Still a young prospect as well. Definitely things that stood out. Alfred Collins also came in really big, so that was good to see. As you see, not a lot of testing. Kind of limits how much we can talk about here. Peebles ran well for the 40-yard dash. Maybe could have went a little bit faster for being 282, but still very fast interior defensive lineman. He's going to be a penetrator type of guy at the NFL level. Shamar Turner didn't test out. Same for Cross, Hemingway. Not a lot of people testing out here. Darius Alexander, still got to take notes on him. There's just a lot of guys I got to get to here and get the time for. But he tested out great. Great size. A lot of things to work with. Just an older prospect. Might be older than this 23-year-old age I kind of thought he was. And then, yeah, that's probably all I'd note here that was worth saying for the position. And then at the end of this, we'll take a look at 40-yard dash times and all that. See if there's some players I don't have marked here. the edge rushers. Abdul Carter didn't do anything at the combine aside from do interviews. And I know I heard some stuff that teams were a little concerned, or people were a little concerned about how much his talk was about him and not necessarily like a team mentality. It's at least what I heard. I don't think it's a huge deal personally. And regardless, you're getting an incredible football player. So how much do I look into that? Not that much, honestly. But unfortunately, not much good you can say because he didn't do anything there. And there were those questions. You could kind of see it when you watch his interviews that where people might get that from. Now, Mike Green, he had to ask a lot of questions about the allegations that were against him. I'm not going to speak on that or give an opinion because we don't know, right? We aren't really part of that situation, so it'd be ill of me to act as if I do know. But he came in pretty small. I mean, 251's good, right? The height is okay, but 32-inch arms, small hands, still a great football player, regardless of that, though. That's got to be remembered for these guys. Nick Scorton dropped a lot of weight. And so this almost gave me like some Braylon Trice flashbacks, who was, I think, kind of generally considered like a first-round type of guy most of the way up to the combine, and then he fell all the way into like the third round, I believe. He hasn't done much in the NFL from what I've heard. I don't think it's going to be that extreme for Scorton, but there's a lot of weight to knock off from what he was supposed to be as a player. So definitely curious to see that because it kind of changes the way you play if you're going to go under that kind of transformation. Now, James Pierce Jr., big enigma here, right? You've got great size, aside from the arm length being a little under what you'd like, but the wingspan's good. So, once again, maybe measurements are off a little bit here. But ran really well during the 40-yard dash. Like, he's a guy who's got a ton of potential for the NFL, but you also heard reports this week that there are a lot of problems in Tennessee, like calling him an uncoachable type of player. There was one that even said there was a legit shot that he would not go in the top 64 picks of the draft. Now, I call bullshit on that. Excuse my language. But I could see him fall. I really could. And I've never really got like a great vibe from him watching interviews or watching him talk. Not that I know everything from that, but that's just been my impression. So we'll see what happens with him. But it is hard to predict what's going to happen with James Pierce Jr. Now, Shamar Stewart, he had a great week. Ran 4.59 for 267 pounds. That's good stuff. Plenty of height, plenty of length. Over 7 foot for his wingspan. Got a 10 for his RAS score. Great stuff from him. Kyle Kennard, a lot slower than I expected. I thought he was a much better athlete than what this shows. And I'll still let the film talk for him, of course, but didn't think he performed super well. Got great size here for some of these guys, sort of like you expected. Jack Sawyer, unfortunately, comes in a little bit not shorter, but not as lengthy as we thought as far as his arm length. 77 inches as well for the wingspan. So not great stuff for him. You hope he had a little more in the toolbox than that. Donovan Azuraku, really long arms. It's going to save him for the height he plays at and really help him out as a prospect. And I've heard a lot of good things about him from scouts over the last few weeks. Landon Jackson, I thought he ran really well, especially for the size. He had a good performance. Outside of that, Jordan Birch, this is also really impressive. A 4.67 at 279 pounds. He just doesn't look like he's that size when I watch him, but apparently he is. I don't think they're lying on purpose at the combine, and I don't think it's a matter of like what these players weigh. It's more so the length and the measurements, because that's been really far off. Final note here, Princely did not run that well. Ran a 4.72 at 244 pounds. Brings a lot of things into question, but still a guy with tools. I mean, he's got plenty of length, so you got that to work with. Now, the linebackers, Jalen Walker, I thought he came in with decent size. especially for what he's going to be asked to do. He's going to play a lot of different positions on the defense, and I think he's got the size to really do all of them a decent amount. With the guy who obviously stood out the most here was Jahad Campbell, 21-year-old guy. He's got the height for it. He's got the weight for it. Very athletic. Almost ran a 4.4. Got a 4.52 here at 1.53 second, 10-yard split. This is phenomenal stuff. And he's almost got the arm length to where you could say this guy could be a pass rusher for you or play outside linebacker. And he really could if they wanted him to make that transition at the NFL level. But I think he's a really good linebacker prospect. And definitely is someone who's going to move up my board. I saw that they're thinking now he's a top 20 lock for this draft, which I think he'll come close to that. I don't know if he does just because it's the linebacker position, but I could see him going really high during the draft. Smail Mondon, he did fine. Maybe thought he'd go a little bit faster for being 224, but still pretty good speed. Jay Higgins, kind of what you expected, but he's just a damn good football player. This was never where he was going to stand out. So, not anything I'm going to put too much stock in because you already expected that for what he's going to be. You don't want to count things twice against someone, right? If you've got a player really high on your board because of how gifted they are as a prospect, when you go to the combine and that gets proven right, you don't count it twice, right? You keep him where he is because that's what you said he was. So, kind of the same thing in the opposite direction with Jay Higgins. Now we're going to wrap this up, cornerbacks and safeties. Now, Will Johnson, there's been a lot of questions emerging with him. He's this year's punching bag as far as the prospect, it seems, later in the go. But still, I think he's got great size for the cornerback position. Did not test out, was disappointed by that. We'll see what he does at his pro day. The question is long speed. That's what people keep bringing up. And I didn't really see that when I originally watched him, but enough people are saying it. It's something I'll reevaluate. But that's the big question with him right now. Benjamin Morrison, I have not heard anything as far as his injury. If I do, I'll probably post something on Twitter about it. But the hip injury was the big thing. I have not heard good or bad on that yet for him. Now, Siobhan Ravel, I thought he came in a little bit bigger than expected. This is phenomenal wingspan we're talking about here, but 194 pounds is good for him, so that worked out well, but he did not run any of the drills. Jahdae Barron, this is a great week for him, right? Obviously, a little bit smaller of a guy, but he's got the mass for the position. This guy ran super fast, ran a 4.3, and he's got the kind of intelligence that reminds you of a player like Brian Branch. So you put this guy in the nickel, he runs 0.2 faster than Branch did at the combine. I mean, what are you going to get out of him? He's going to be an incredible player. And it's not like he can only play the nickel. He can play outside. He can even play safety as well. This is someone that, if we didn't have Jarion Jones, I'd be pounding the table for him right now. And even with Jarion Jones, this is so good of a prospect that if he did fall, I wouldn't have a problem with it. If Jacksonville said, screw it, we're going to get this guy because it's too good to pass on. So, Jahdae Barron, definitely someone who stood out to me, and he's going to rise once again in my rankings. But the fastest 40-yard dash of the week goes to Maxwell Hairston. Ran a 4.28. He's someone who I think has put his stock in the first round, I would say. He's a little short, right? 5'11", 183 is not great for mass, but he has all the speed and athleticism in the world to keep up, and I think he's a willing enough run defender to where you're going to get someone who's going to help you make an impact and be a good part of your defense, and could be worth a first-round pick, especially in this year's class. Now, Azareye'h Thomas came in with great size. He's going to go high, I think, just because of that, having good athleticism as well, which we didn't get to see him run, unfortunately. But still, he's a really, really good prospect. Trey Amos is interesting just because of the 10-yard split and the 40-yard dash times. This just feels incorrect, because this would be indicating he's got some of the greatest top speed ever. So I don't know if the combine got these numbers wrong, but still tested out well athletically. Kobe Bryant did not, which was a little disappointing. But he also did put on some weight, so there's pluses and minuses here with him. Dorian Strong tested out fine. Outside of that, yeah, Darian Porter, um, he's gonna go high. I think. I don't know about first round, but I don't think this guy escapes a second. I think even with how long it took for him to play, and wondering what the hell was going on with that, he is someone who's got so many traits and so many things in his toolbox to work with. A team's going to take a shot on him and try to develop this guy. Because if you get him to be the type of player you want him to be and you're able to develop him, what's the limitation, right? This is just an awesome football player if you're able to develop him on your football team. So definitely someone who stood out this week with really everything he did. Outside of that, Sebastian Castro didn't run super fast, sort of what you expected. It's not a super athletic type of player, more of a zone guy. Jacob Parrish, hell of a time here. 4.35. Can't wait to watch him. He's unfortunately far down the list of guys that I got to get to, but he seems like someone who could be a really awesome slot corner in the NFL. And had decent size as well. I think the weight's good, especially for the length that he's working with. So you got stuff to work with for him. Now, getting to safety and wrapping this thing up, Malachi Starks did not run super fast. At the same time, you got to remember we got to balance this with film. He's a great athlete on film. He's probably better than what this would indicate. Still, though, pretty good size. Little light, but he's a free safety, so it'll work. Kevin Winston Jr., as far as his size, awesome stuff here, right? Everything you want from a frame question or frame perspective. It's just a question of, how athletic is he? And we don't get to see that because the guy's hurt, right? And that's just part of this. Now, other guys who stood out, Nick Emanwari, huge winner from the combine. Can't make that clear enough. I mean, you look at this size for a safety. He's an inch taller than you would ask for. 10 pounds heavier. The hands are not huge, but that's not a huge part of what he's doing. Great arm length, great wingspan, incredible 40-yard dash for 220. This is ridiculous stuff. 10 for the RAS score. Says a lot, right? My grades for him, this is updated over here for my safeties. I have S tier for size and athleticism. That is not common. You get to put those two together. But Emanwari does that. So great week from him. Maybe someone who could even sneak into the first with the right team, because you just got to get one team that'll do it. Maybe someone does late in the first round. Now, for the rest of these guys, I like the size that Wooler came in with. Thought that was good for what he plays at. 4.57 is not that bad. He's not going to be someone I'm going to have running around deep in the second or third level of defense, right? He's going to be a strong safety. He's going to be in the box. He's going to defend the run. He's a hell of a good football player at it. I think this is someone who's going to get drafted deep in the class and be a solid starter, at least for an NFL team, for quite a long time. So, Hunter Wooler, last guy we'll talk about here, but I thought it was still a good week for him, even if it's not this incredible athletic performance. So, those are my rankings here. We're going to look really quick at the NFL Combine results. Ignore my spelling. Obviously great. Because there were some other players that I do not have listed right now that had really good performances. So I do want to make sure I at least mention them. So, go position by position. Yeah, Brady Cook. I don't have him listed. I don't think I'm going to put him down my board, just especially because quarterback isn't a big thing for Jacksonville. But he's a great athlete. I'm not shocked by the time that he ran. Jaden Blue, maybe thought he'd be a little bit faster than he was. And he's got a fumbling issue. That's the big thing with him. So probably have Tuden over him for sure, comparing those two. And I do want to make sure I shout out RJ Harvey. I did skim over him. But he had a really good time in the 40-yard dash, and he's got a lot to work with. At wide receiver, there were a lot of players that I don't have marked down that had really fast times. So could definitely put some stock into that and maybe consider doing some scouting on them. The tight end position, yeah, you just have a lot of A lot of people opting out, so nothing really stands out too crazy here. Offensive line today, Jared Wilson having the fastest time. I cannot wait to watch him. I've heard he's the best center in this class, and for some reason I hadn't heard of him until recently. Defensive ends, not much I'd say stands out here. Don't want to knock too many guys, so we won't go too far down the list. It was, so Ingram Dawkins had a really good time. He was testing out well, it felt like, in most drills. He was the guy I was going to note. Stood out that I did not have listed on my big board. The linebacker position, these are some really good times from players. Danny Stutzman, I thought, was doing very well athletically out here. Another guy I thought had a pretty good week. Cornerback, not much else to note. Maybe the Rutgers corner running really fast. Someone I might get on my board before the end of the year. And that's probably all I'd note here. So, with that said, we are going to wrap this up. I know there's other things too. We could get into maybe some of the drills or talk about the bench press a little bit. There's some interesting results there. But ultimately, a lot of what I'm looking for from the combine are your measurements. How are you interviewing? How are your medicals? And then how much of an athlete are you, right? When we watch the film, where we write about what we expected from you? Because there were a lot of players that I felt like I was off on as far as what I expected and what actually happened. So wanted to focus on a lot of that. But with that said, we're going to wrap it up there. So do want to shout out our channel members, Premier Nasir 904, Nightmare Eco, Gator John Bites, Scrubber Ducky 500, Frangies, and Brian Foster. I appreciate all your support. This week, I guess the next thing we'll do probably is going to have to be that post-combine NFL mock draft. We got free agency coming up as well, 1 week from tomorrow for me. So that's going to be really soon. A lot of exciting things are going to be happening. I should be able to record pretty quick after signings as well. I'll make sure to get home in time for free agency and cover that for you guys. So I appreciate all your time here. Let me know your thoughts on the combine, guys that impressed you, maybe players you fell in love with, players that maybe disappointed you, and all those different things. And I'll make sure to get back with you in the comments. But appreciate y'all watching. Hope you have a great rest of your day. And finally, go Jags.